Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy Veedu Vidz in the house. I hope everyone is doing well. As you've guessed by the title of this video, I will be talking about Mohammed Hijab, apostasy, and liberal thinkers. So Mohammed Hijab does believe that an apostate, if he or she comes out publicly within an Islamic state, should be punished. If you are one of those Muslims who does not believe in the apostasy law or the blasphemy law, then that's fantastic. That's great to hear. I would encourage you, of course, if it's safe, to speak to Muslims like Mohammed Hijab and present your side of the argument. This video is not addressed to you. You have nothing to worry about. Now, Mohammed Hijab is asked in Speaker's Corner the following question.
Yeah, so the punishment for apostasy in Islam. So
What is his response?
a lot of the time we ask this question, what is the punishment for apostasy in Islam? And a more interesting question for me recently has been, to what extent can liberalism, or does liberalism, or do liberal philosophers talk about this? Because that's for me a really interesting discussion, isn't it?
So clearly we see here that instead of actually answering the question directly, he deflects or does a misdirection and says, instead of saying, well, Islam says X on apostasy, he says, what do liberals think? What do liberal philosophers or liberal thinkers say about apostasy? That for me is a more interesting question. Well, unfortunately, Mohammed Hijab, that wasn't the question that was asked. So this is not a very an honest answer to the question in the first place, when you're not actually answering the question directly. If I say to you, bro, why haven't you done your homework? And then you say, well, so-and-so hasn't done their homework, or what about this person? Like, I'm asking you, why haven't you done your homework instead of someone else? So this is a misdirection which I have seen so many times in these types of discussions. If I speak about, the slave trade, the Arab slave trade, but what about America? Okay. If I talk about, something bad that Muslims do, but what about America? But what about Israel? But what about Britain? But what about what? This is called whataboutery. So instead of actually answering the question, you start to deflect and point fingers at other people and other thinkers and other religions. Now, I'm not saying those religions or people are free of guilt. No, everyone, I'm sorry to say, human history, everyone has blood on their hands. Everyone has done something wrong. But if you believe in a religion that is absolute, that is universal, that was the beginning and the end, then it should stand upon its own 2 feet and not lean upon other beliefs, other people, or other philosophies in order to justify and rationalize its own doctrines. If you believe the apostasy law, then say, I believe the apostasy law, and this is the punishment for the following reasons. Instead of saying, well, let's see what liberals say. Let's see what so-and-so said about it. As if trying to make it more palatable to your audience, because so-and-so said it, therefore, Islam isn't that bad at all. This is actually quite a defensive move, to be honest with you, and something which I think is actually betrays a bit of insecurity on his behalf.
To what extent are what are referred to as laws of apostasy, which is, for example, if I come out and say I'm no longer, say for instance, a Christian. I'm not going to use the Muslim example. Say it's a Christian country, and I come out and say I'm no longer a Christian. To what extent can social contract theory, the like of which was advocated by people like Rousseau, and obviously John Locke, before him Thomas Hobbes, and almost all liberal theorists, even J.S. Mill, can it facilitate for a kind of punitive punishment for those who renounce their faith publicly? Now, I'm going to make a very bold claim here. I'm putting Islam to the side right now. I'm putting Islam to the side. It's not about Islam. I'm going to say that from my reading of liberalism, that can be facilitated.
Now, Mohammed Hijab's main argument is as follows, that within liberalism or within liberal thought, there is this thing called the social contract, and many philosophers or thinkers spoke about the social contract, and they have different views on what the social contract should be. Some people say that if you were to openly announce your apostasy from a religion, you could be punished. Now, he mentions, like, he does a lot of this name dropping, Rousseau, J.S. Mills, John Locke, Kant, so on and so forth. And these people said X, and these people said this, and these people said that. Now, John Stuart Mill was agnostic. Some people even accused him of being an atheist. He was a proponent of free speech and against the blasphemy law. How on earth he justifies killing apostates is beyond me. I have tried to find where he has said that online. I can't find it. If you can, please send it to me in the comment section below. I would be happy to read where John Stuart Mill supports killing apostates when he himself was agnostic and even accused of atheism. John Locke, on the other hand, was against atheists. Why? Because he believed that if you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist and you make a promise, so for example, if you make a covenant or a promise or an oath, that oath or promise will not be sacred or will not have any sanctity to it, because normally when you make an oath, you say, oh, I swear to God that I will perform X, Y, and Z duties. But if you don't believe in God, how can you be held to that oath or that promise? That's why he was against atheists. Now, in a later essay, I think it's titled On Human Understanding, he later then questioned this belief, saying, I'm not sure if atheism is an obstruction to political obedience. But he had beliefs, which I, by the way, disagree with, saying that you cannot be openly atheist and that or atheists are incapable of holding to their promise because they don't believe in God, as if religious people all hold to their promise because they believe in God. But even for argument's sake, let's say, for example, John Locke did believe this. John Locke did believe, for argument's sake, you should not be openly atheist, and if you are, there could be some legal ramifications, legal punishments for you coming out openly as an atheist. Does this mean, as a liberal, I am now stuck? I have to justify and rationalize John Locke's view. Is that what it means? No, of course not. I can simply say, I disagree with John Locke. I believe this position of his is nonsense, is ridiculous, is outdated. It is not a good idea. And this is the crucial difference between someone like myself and a Mohammed Hijab. My brain is not intellectually tied. My hands are not tied. I can disagree and agree with whoever I want to. You as a Muslim cannot do the same. You cannot disagree with the Quran. You cannot disagree with Muhammad, the Prophet. At best, you can come out with a different interpretation of the Quran. You can say this week, this hadith is weak, this hadith is strong, so on and so forth. That is at best what you can do. You cannot outright say the Prophet, when he spoke about a certain matter, when it came to stoning, when it came to lashing, when it came to homosexuals, he was wrong. You cannot say that by definition. So you may be intellectually limited in what you can and cannot believe. I am not. I can disagree with the founder of liberalism. I can disagree with one of the major propagators of liberalism. I can do that, and there is no intellectual cost. There is no, how am I going to justify this? How am I going to reconcile this? There is none of that. If I bring good evidence, good reason, I can disagree with him, and there is no problem whatsoever. Now, that is not true for you or many other Muslims or many other people of religion who have found themselves in this situation where on one side they realize liberalism works or some other system works and their religion doesn't really work, so they have to do this gymnastics. How am I going to justify it? How am I going to rationalize it? Well, they do this whataboutery. Well, so and so did this, therefore it's kind of okay. John Stuart Mill apparently, or John Locke said this in the Victorian times, therefore it's not that, what Islam says is not that bad. So this is actually a very weak position, and this is the key fundamental difference between someone like myself, a liberal agnostic who's open to ideas, who questions everything, between me and someone like a Mohammed Hijab who is intellectually constrained in what he can and cannot believe. I can agree with 70% of what John Locke says and disagree with 30% of what he says. Where does it say that I have to accept someone's beliefs wholesale? You will only find that type of requirement present in religions like Islam. It's either all or nothing. Another point to consider is that these thinkers like John Locke, who may have justified or tried to rationalize the apostasy law, they were born in Christian Europe. They were Christians or deists themselves. And the idea of blasphemy and apostasy, these are ideas that are found in Abrahamic faiths. These are not ideas found within liberalism. In fact, they are actually opposite and antithetical to liberal values. The fact that they were trying to justify it meant that they had this intellectual baggage, this cultural baggage of the apostasy law or blasphemy law, which they were trying to reconcile, and which John Locke himself later tried to, which later he actually questioned whether this was actually an obstruction to political obedience. It is silly to lay the blame or try to say that you can fit in blasphemy or apostasy within a liberal framework when these ideas actually originated from Abrahamic faiths, which are not liberal in and of themselves.
When they come to us and say, look, you need to modernize, what do they say? They say you need to modernize. Muslims, you need to modernize. What do you mean? Come on, tell me, white man, what do you mean by... Sorry,
Westernize.
Well, yeah. What do you mean by modernize? I want to know what you mean, yeah? Okay, you'll say, look, and by the way, when I say white man, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about...
Western.
Yeah, the Western man.
And then we heard Mohammed Hijab say something about, people say that Islam should modernize, and he made a reference to the white man. And this is typical post-colonial master's orders, as his friend Ali Dawah said. These people still see the white man, the white man. Well, let me tell you this. Hinduism has absolutely no concept of blasphemy, has absolutely no concept of apostasy laws in its religion. Hinduism predates the Abrahamic faiths. It's one of the oldest faiths that we know. There is no punishment for leaving or joining or thinking differently or saying stupid things. There is no punishment. Is Hinduism a construct of the white man? Is Hinduism a construct of J.S. Mill? Is Hinduism a construct of Western colonialism? Really, the same is true for Buddhism. There is no concept of apostasy law in Buddhism. So please do not pin down me disagreeing with apostasy law as some sort of bowing down to the white man. Completely nonsense. Hinduism and Buddhism have no concept of believing in apostasy law. And by the way, me disagreeing with the apostasy law is not bowing down to the white man, but actually standing up against the Abrahamic tradition and their rigid values such as apostasy and blasphemy, which try and keep people in line and suppress free thought. Furthermore, liberal ideas can evolve and change and adapt. Nowhere does it say that once John Locke has spoken, no one can come and change what he has said afterwards. We do not believe John Locke or John Stuart Mill or any other John for that matter is infallible. We do not believe that God spoke to him directly and gave him the revelation of liberalism, and that's it. Our hands are tied. We can change and amend their views and their beliefs. And if you look at the countries in the world that have adopted liberal values as a foundation for their law and as a foundation of their society, there is no punishment for leaving religion, something which converts to Islam in Western countries enjoy. There are many converts to Islam that are public about their conversion stories, and fantastic, great for them. I'm happy for them that they have found peace. They can do so with no fear of violence from the government. The same cannot be said about Muslims who leave Islam in Muslim countries. All the apostasy laws that exist in the world happen to be in Muslim countries. Is that a coincidence? I think not.